In episode number 380 of the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, we cover a range of wide listener questions from all of you to end 2019.
And our comic book highlight this week is Wonder Woman Dead Earth #1 from the DC Black Label line.
All of this and so much more on today's show. Hello and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week, ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I am Rocket Grunt Daniel.
And I am Emperor Kelli.
For those of you new to the show, the way we normally format it is we cover some news, but this week, news took a dump because it is the last week before 2019 ends and we get 2020. So a lot of these news outlets, a lot of people out there that gather these things kind of go on vacation, right? They take off that week or two and head off to wherever. So news is basically non-existent this week. And I could have thrown in a news story or two, but instead we ended up calling out to the Brokette core members for listener questions. And a lot of them are holiday themed and themed to the next year, some comic book and movie questions as well. So that'll be good for discussion between Kelli and I. But normally it would be news. And then we are still going to head into our Patreon shoutouts for the week. And then we'll end it with a comic book review.
So our first question we're going to tackle is actually a pretty lengthy one. So we'll break it down into parts, read the first part, answer the question. But it comes from @OmniJam on Twitter.
His first question is, best and worst Christmas presents?
The worst is an avocado. Thanks. I don't know. Do you have, does it pop to mind quickly when you hear that question?
Not anything negative or like really, really terrible. I mean, I like clothes now. I guess as a kid, I would have been like, oh man, like you'd want a video game or a toy or something like that. But now it's like, we need clothes for Leo as well. So that's always really helpful. Best present, I think there was one year where we did get a Sega Genesis. That might have been one of the Christmases. It was either the Genesis or the N64, but I know we definitely got a console for Christmas. So that was a huge one. But I'd have to get with my brother and try to get these memories kind of together because it all just blurs. Would you have one that pops up in your head as one of the greatest ones? You
mentioned the Genesis. I did get an N64 for Christmas one year. I also got a Barbie Dreamhouse for Christmas one year, and that was pretty rockin'. I loved that Barbie Dreamhouse. It was like all pink and it had an elevator and like she could go chill in her bathtub, her nice little mansion. But with the N64, while I loved it, I always felt guilty because I had mentioned to Mom that like I was just going to run away because I never got an N64. And then like a month later, it was Christmas and they got it for me. And I was like, oh, this is just so I wouldn't run away. Which she probably wasn't even paying attention when I said I was going to run away. So yeah, those were some really good ones. I think now that I'm older, Christmas just holds a different meaning because now it's just about getting together with the family and, watching Leo enjoy these moments and spending time, with both of our families. And that's the best Christmas present, if you want to be cheesy, is just having that much love surrounding us and him.
I will say one that just came to mind too is we got my first batch of comic books because my neighbor downstairs, when we used to live in Chicago, used to have the Jim Lee comics, the X-Men ones, and he would bust them out and we would go through them. And we, they didn't have money to get comics, so I would, not share them, but he would show those to me. And when we moved many years later to a different part of Illinois, for that Christmas, I had asked for comic books, and I'd asked for Spawn and what was I asking? I know Spawn was on that list. Sonic the Hedgehog was a big one. Things that I recognized because I saw the Spawn cartoon on HBO, and I probably shouldn't have, but I always thought that was a cool looking character. And my parents one Christmas got me the grab bags, and now I know what they are. It's essentially a really good price for a pack of comic books that the comic shop is trying to get rid of or trying to move. And in that, there was a wide range of Batman. There was some Sonic the Hedgehog in there, but those were separate from the grab bag. Spider-Man, I remember the Carnage Silver Surfer was in that pack of theirs, and now that book is going for a little bit, but back then you couldn't get rid of it. And those, I remember that very specifically because I loved it. It was just all kinds of different comics, but that was also the Batman Black and White that I always talk about, where the guy fantasizes killing Batman. So as a kid, I read that issue. I'm like, oh shit, because you see Batman and a bullet going through his head. So I thought Batman was dead.
Oh no!
From that issue, and it was all in black and white too. I knew some of these weren't appropriate for me, but I didn't want them taken away, so I just, I kept them, and and they were great. So that's one that comes. Those were my first comic books. Was One Christmas, and after that, I asked my parents, like, where'd you get these? And it was from Gotham City Comics in Illinois, and also Keith's Comics, which was about 10 minutes away from it. And Keith's is still there. They're still around. I visit them every time I go up. It's the same guy running it, Keith himself. Keith's Comics, comics with a K, and the CS is an X.
Of course.
So that's one that came to mind too. Yeah, that's a good one. Now, next question here is best and worst New Year's experiences.
Oh man, you have yours?
One of my favorites was at Epcot a few years back when we went with Alex, and that was when, we came to visit you at the park, and then we went around the world. We went to the different stations that had all the different celebrations from around the world, New Year's, but getting out of that parking lot was fucking hell. We didn't get out. We stayed till midnight, the countdown, of course, and we didn't leave the parking lot till like 2:30 in the morning, just because all the cars were backed up, and it was insanity. So that was a culmination of good and bad. That's probably my worst New Year's, and it's not terrible, all things considered.
Right. That was probably my best New Year's because it was so being cheesy, and the whole time we've been together, we've never missed a midnight New Year's kiss, and that was the one instance when I had to work to midnight, and, you just came through and you said, well, we're not going to miss this midnight. We haven't missed one. We're not going to miss this one. And so that's why you came to the park. And so that was super special for me because I had to be there, but then you still showed up to make sure that we had that moment. My worst one, maybe a year after that, I don't know. At one point, we had a party at our house, and I had been busy getting ready all day and hadn't eaten, and then just started drinking with everybody, and I was so sick. It was probably the most drunk I have ever been. And I had to work the next morning, and I felt disgusting, and I threw up so many times, and no, that was the worst. That will never happen again.
Next question here is any major comic book events you're looking forward to? These are all from OmniJam so far.
More comics. Batman and Catwoman's wedding.
Saga, the return of Saga,
yes.
That's an event, isn't it?
When is it ever going to come back? It's been like a year.
At least a year and a half.
What? Another year and a half?
Well, I'm just going to keep saying that. At least a year and a half. It'll keep rolling. Anytime someone asks when Saga is, they add another at least a year and a half to it.
No! Stop asking.
For me, it's going to be what ends up happening out of the Watchmen Doomsday Clock ending. That was my favorite comic for the last year and a half that was coming out too. I also want to see where James Tynion IV does take Batman after Tom King leaves. I've read issue number 86 in an advanced preview copy from DC, and it was okay. There was some Deathstroke action in there, but I don't know. It didn't really blow me away like his Detective Comics did. But I'm going to give it, I'm going to keep reading it. It's fucking Batman. That's a series that I stay subscribed to regardless. This whole 5G movement or rumor or whatever that's coming from DC Comics where they're supposedly going into the future for the next who knows how long, where we have the new Batman and the new Teen Titans and all of that. Anytime they try an initiative like that, it doesn't go over well because the characters that we know and love are no longer there. It's very similar to the Future's End type of month that they did, and that didn't do too well either. So I'm nervous about that as a retailer and as a reader. But as long as you have the DC Black Label books, which are carrying the line very well, I want to see those continue in the larger format and seeing what other stories these writers and artists can put out without hopefully much interference from editorial. So I think that's mainly what not the 5G stuff, but everything around it.
Next question. Any plans to make big changes to your shop over the next year?
We do want to kind of spruce it up a little bit. We want to put labels on the trade paperback shelves. So, because right now it's split under DC, Independent, and Marvel. Independent being essentially anything that's not the big two. And it's not clear enough to people that come in, especially that if they come in for the first time, they just see 3 rows of trades And yes, they're themed as far as like, all right, it's in front of the new DC section, it's in front of the new Indie, and in front of the new Marvel. But even then, we don't have signage, a big sign that says DC, Indie, and Marvel on each section. So we're trying to get some kind of labeling done so that it says at least what company they're from on the trade shelves, just to get some of that. I know the owner wants to do something a little bit bigger, like having characters on the labels sticking out of the trades. But I think for now, putting at least sticky labels on the shelving itself will make a big difference in getting people, because people don't want to ask questions, even if you ask them like, hey, are you doing all right so far? What can I help you find? They don't want, they're like, no, I'm all right. So as long as you make it easier for them, I think that'll be good. So that's one thing we're focusing on. The kids corner, I would like to do more with also. But the thing is, the pops have gotten so out of control with all the releases, and it's a huge column for us. It does really well, but we all need to kind of corral that and bring it back a little bit. As well as they do for us, I do think we have a little bit too many of those, too many Dragon Ball statues. We've stopped ordering those.
No, not too many.
Well, when people start buying them again, then we can start ordering them again.
Just bring them home for me. I'll store them here.
We have four statues coming in still, and then like our orders will stop because it's always months in advance. But once the holidays have cleared us out of a few, not enough to where I feel comfortable with the number of Dragon Ball pops we have still, or not pops, but statues we have still. So I want to sell through all of those. And then we're also going to go through the back issue bins and kind of pull out any dead series that aren't moving and making those into the storyline packs and grab bags that we were talking about earlier. So little things, nothing major as far as overhaul. We're in a really good spot. The area is growing constantly. So like one of the things that we ideally would love is to have a bigger store, but this one is so profitable as it is. And it's in such a good spot that it's like, unless maybe we knock out a business or a business moves out next to us and we knock out the wall and merge, that's the only conceivable thing. But I don't see that happening anytime soon.
I have some changes that I'm making to my shop, too, because I assumed he was asking me.
Of course, yeah, your coffee shop.
My coffee shop. Still constantly making changes, right? Getting it up to a place that I feel comfortable, pars, things organized correctly on the shelves, etc. I don't think people a lot of times realize how much goes into making sure that everything is well set so that we can serve everybody and get coffee. I need to do a lot of hiring, a lot of training, just a lot of stuff going on. But one thing that my employees came to me with, and I think that is brilliant, we have a really big patio on the front, and they want to do an event called Pups on the Patio. So like everybody brings their dog and you get to hang out with dogs, and I'm like, brilliant, do it. So I don't know, that's in the books, but it'll happen eventually.
That'll be a pretty big event if you end up doing it, and it'll be big on Instagram, especially if I don't know if your shop has like a dedicated social media account.
I would love to have one, but there's a lot of gray area around that. So treading carefully, don't want to get fired. Haven't been there that long.
Next question is, any nerdy New Year's resolutions like trying out new books, giving up old habits, going back to any stories you gave up on?
My only resolution, 2 resolutions, neither are nerdy. I don't think I'd call them. Oh, I do want to play more Pokemon. That's on my list. That's kind of nerdy. I would like to eat better because I just snack on peanut butter pretzels all day.
Yeah, you do.
That's very much not good for me. And I would like to have better work-life balance. Those are my resolutions.
That work-life balance is like an ongoing thing. And I feel like I have it better now than a year ago because I used to want to get, answer questions on their store. And the staff used to call me way more often than they do now. So I'm like, all right, everyone's equipped enough to be able to answer questions on their own. And I still get a question every now and again, a phone call, but I'm getting less of them now. So that's good. And that keeps me less distracted and thinking about work or anything like that. So I think I'm doing okay there, but constantly trying to refine that and work on that. I want to start Pokemon Sword and Shield. That was gifted to us by the Brokette Core. I would love to. And I think by the time I possibly may have time to do it, Bulbasaur will hopefully be available in Sword and Shield.
So 4 years from now.
And 4 years from now, when that happens, I know someone in the Brokette core will have a perfect IV Bulbasaur that they'll have ready for me.
They're just going to gift to you.
That I'll be like, here's a Pidgey or whatever, like early Pokemon I catch.
You can do that worm thing, that weird caterpillar.
Here's a worm thing, caterpillar, for that perfect IV Bulbasaur, the greatest Pokemon of all time. Suckers, no trade backs. Hell yeah. That's what I want to do. I want to start that. I want to have more time to play or watch movies. That's something that because of sleep and because of Leo, it's not possible, unfortunately. So I'm just kind of waiting and hoping that one day I will have that time, but we shall see. Giving up old habits. I think eating better is always on the table. I have been better about no longer drinking any Pepsi, and that's gone from my diet completely. And I'm now drinking seltzer water, which I know you don't like,
Blech.
but
I just hate fizzy things. It's a texture thing. I don't know. I can't do it. It hurts my mouth, if that makes any sense. But yeah, don't like it.
Yeah, mine's the label. It's a lime one. Don Perrier or something.
We get the Target brand usually, but you have had Perrier, yeah.
It's like lime seltzer. That shit is amazing. I'm addicted to that stuff. That and coffee is basically what I live off of.
I mean, I also live off coffee, but just coffee.
And and there's another side of my diet and life that I'm working on, but until I make significant progress in that, then I may talk about it here on the podcast. But that's constantly being worked on and something that I'll eventually hit a milestone in by this time next year. How about that? Next question is best settings for reading/enjoying nerd things. For example, warm blanket, being outside, total silence, music in the background, snacks, etc.
I mean, snacks is always the right answer. But it depends on what nerd things we're talking about. Are we talking about a movie? Are we talking about reading comic books?
Yeah, all of the above. I think all of them I need to be drinking something, whether it's coffee or my seltzer soda.
For me, when I read, I need silence. I don't know why. I can't have music. I can't have TV in the background. If I read, it's got to be silent. At least when I read comic books. Like if I'm reading something on my phone, I can usually focus on that. But with books, always has to be silent for me to be able to really concentrate and focus. If it's a movie, I love going to the theater when we see like nerdy movies, but I also enjoy just watching them from our couch, right? It's always most fun if we have popcorn or something that we can snack on and enjoy and sit there with little Leo, and he's watching more things. He loves Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
He'll watch that. We started watching Godzilla the other day and he watched some of that, and then I went, this is too intense for you. Mommy's going to turn off Godzilla.
Which Godzilla?
The most recent one, not King of the Monsters, the one before that.
Gotcha. And he was kind of freaking out a bit?
Not really, but I was freaking out because I was like, let's not watch this woman die because that's what was happening.
Godzilla again. That piece of shit.
He wasn't killing him. It was the nuclear explosion, remember? On that guy's birthday? And then his wife goes in there to check on something and the reactor explodes and she's running out and he's waiting and he can't wait any longer, so he locks it.
Yeah.
And as soon as he locks the door, she's knocking on it.
But then these monsters wake up to feed on Godzilla and stuff, the Mutos.
Anyway, so those are where I enjoy those nerdy things.
Right there with you. Popcorn, something to drink. That about does it. I can read with TV in the background because if Leo's watching something, I'll be sitting there reading it. So I have no issue with that. I can do it while I'm quiet. I can't be on the couch reading it. I have to be at a table. So that's one thing. And something I do, I don't know if anyone else does this if you shop at a local comic store and you get that comic shop news, but here's a pro tip from someone who's been reading for years. But when you especially when you have kids, and if you're reading on that kitchen table is not always going to be clean. There's always going to be a little bit of some crumbs or whatever, fingerprints. So I take the comic shop newses, aside from reading them and going through them, you use them as placemats. So you fold them out and you put them down and then you put your comics on there. And I'm not so anal retentive where, some of these comics where I have to wear gloves when I read them, or I have to read them in a dry environment or anything like that. But
there's no dry environment in Florida.
It's very true. But the thing is, some of the guys, what they'll do is they've told me they'll put the AC all the way down to bring the humidity down to keep their comics as humidity free as possible. Wow. So some people do that. For me, it's about Yeah, I want to keep them neat, though. They don't have to be perfect, but I know fingerprints are a big thing with me. When I used to play video games, that was a huge thing with me, and that continues even now when I read comic books. And for the most part, my fingers are pretty dry. They're not greasy, and that's from me constantly washing my hands, keeping my phone clean. So and all of that is not building up, and that's why they stay clean. So that's a big ritual for me, is the comic shop news ritual.
Comic shop news placemat.
Keep it clean, keep it nice. Those were all the questions from OmniJam this week. Huge set of questions. Thank you so much providing content for the Brokette Core. But we have Bobby as well on his weekly submission. Thank you so much, Bobby. You can find them on Twitter at Cuban Slim.
Bobby asks, is it right that fans or social media response can and will influence a film or franchise, and how it can and will be changed based on responses and feedback? Remove any bias. Should this be a thing? Is there a better way for this to occur, maybe?
Great set of questions, and obviously all of this, you can look at for example, more recently, the Sonic the Hedgehog controversy with the changes, and then the release the Snyder Cut movement, of course. The beauty of it is I don't even have to remove biases because it still ends up falling in the right set of mind when I'm answering this, to where the release the Snyder Cut movement is very much justified, and Sonic the Hedgehog, or people that bitch for something to change, like the Star Wars fans, are not justified. And the difference here is I don't think it's right for fans to campaign to change an artist's vision or a filmmaker's vision. But I do think it's right for fans to campaign for the original artist's vision, especially when it's a studio meddling with that movie or franchise or anything. So that's where the Snyder Cut movement is not campaigning, something, Snyder's, if Snyder's Justice League had come out as he wanted, as intended, and then we were like, no, fuck that shit, that was terrible, change it instead, I think that would be wrong. But instead, we're campaigning for what was originally intended by the artist and by what he made with BVS and Man of Steel, which we came out in droves for. Those made a lot of money, and Justice League did not. Justice League did not, because it was not Zack Snyder's film. It was not what we had gotten previously. So we're campaigning for I think it's the moral right to let Zack release what he wants. Whereas this original filmmaker, Sonic the Hedgehog, for example, has this vision for Sonic, and that was instead changed and bullied thanks to the fans and the memes and everything else. So now his original vision is no longer there, and they've instead catered to changing and moving away. They're acting as, for example, Warner Brothers. They're being the Warner Brothers of that Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. So the difference is fans are removed. When WB first did that bid, aside from critics and MCU sheep, which I don't consider fans of Zack Snyder anyway. And I think that's the distinct difference. So no, I don't think it's right that fans can do what they did, like to Sonic the Hedgehog or to the Star Wars franchise moving forward. But there is positive power, a positive side to it, where you can help out the filmmakers. You can do good with it, like the Release the Snyder Cut movement.
I think that's definitely spot on. It's just like with any other art medium. If, someone took, I don't know, a Van Gogh painting, right? And somebody said, enough people said, well, I don't like the way that looks, so we just painted over it. It's kind of the same thing, right? Then you have that outrage of, well, but this was their vision. Why did you paint over it? Why did you change that? Because this is what they had intended, and you're not them. Right? You're just saying, well, because my perception is I don't like that, you need to change it. And so, yeah, I'm definitely on board with that, of following the artist's vision, even if it's not my vision or something that I enjoy, right? There's a meaning behind everything that they put into these movies, like the Cats movie. It was terrible, but do I think they're going to pull it and change it? And do I think they should? No, just let it be terrible.
It's funny you brought that up, and we haven't seen it, so it might be our favorite movie of all time. I'm not going to say it's terrible myself, but they are actually changing it.
No.
So they're in, because of the beauty of digital now that we have with films, and this is very dicey because I'd have to research more into Cats and what the decision was, but they're essentially patching it. with updated visuals. And I don't know if maybe this was a joke I saw on Twitter, but let's say this is going to happen. If it didn't already happen with Cats, and that's not true, it's going to happen because of the nature of digital movies now, where they're essentially patching in the visuals so they don't look as creepy in the movie moving forward. So that's what they're going to be doing. And to me, that's like, all right, is that because of the director and he ran out of time and this is how they intended? Or is this response to very similar to Sonic the Hedgehog, which I don't agree with? So that's where I'm like, don't patch it. Don't do any of that shit. And I know they're doing it for box office, but then now what's happening when it releases on home video? What's happening with people who did enjoy that original version of the Cats and they like the movie? So now when they buy it on Blu-ray, are they going to get the updated version? Are they going to get two? Leave them as is. If it's a studio mandated odd fucking Sonic the Hedgehog, revival or facelift or whatever the hell they're doing, it's insane. And it's really funny you bring that up because I know that's going to be more common in the future.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that they're listening to mass audiences that much because this isn't like a TV show. You can't just course correct halfway through. You shouldn't just course correct halfway through. And it is very discouraging because we continually ask for more information about the movie before. We ask for trailers, we ask for, images, all these things, but then if we as the mass are just going to criticize it, then what's their motivation to even do that?
Great question, Bobby, as always. Next one comes from @Innsmouth_Tide.
Innsmouth asks, ranking DC animated shows and movies, please.
And @Mr. Forklift chimed in and he said we can use his list at typing about movies in combination with that question to see if we agree or disagree with his list. So he had best and worst of these animated movies. So we'll go ahead and couple that together and answer the question. So we'll go through Mr. Forklift's list here. Best, he had Batman Beyond, Return of the Joker. And I don't think this is necessarily 1 through whatever. I could be wrong, but we'll just take this as this is a group of great DC films.
I did enjoy that one. It was very good.
Return of the Joker?
Yeah.
I like the original cut too. Did you know that there was one of those? When it came out on home video, they removed the color of the ha-ha-has in Old Man Bruce's cave because those were red and they changed it to like purple or green because it looked too much like blood. Like he had killed Bruce or whatever or used Bruce's blood to do that. And then the ending in the original cut of Return of the Joker, Tim Drake shoots the Joker and kills him. And that's how he was forever changed and could never be Robin. But then in the later release, where they made it for kids, is the Joker trips or slips on water, falls and grabs onto electrical wires and kills himself that way. Like, whoa, whoops. And that was the way that they had done it. And there were so many weird changes like that. Did not fit with the movie. And when they finally released the actual, I don't know if they called it director's cut or extended cut, it made way more sense. It was better and it catered to Batman the Animated Series fans. And that's the one that they've since been releasing, thankfully, where they're like, well, people that grew up on this, they're old enough. It'll be fine. We're not going to get angry parents.
Okay.
So great one on that list. Excellent movie.
Next up, he has Justice League, The New Frontier.
That one I wouldn't put on my best list. It's a Darwin Cook inspired book, and it wasn't directly translated in the way I would have liked. And it's hard to do Darwin's, I think it is, because we haven't seen it done perfectly yet.
Right.
But Darwin's art wasn't really on that level in this adaptation. I don't think the story either was strong enough. Now, when you read New Frontier, Darwin's pages impact the story so much, and it's one that simply wasn't done at its full potential or successfully, in my opinion, with the New Frontier movie.
Next is Justice League, Crisis on Two Earths.
What'd you think of this one? This is the one with Owlman, and they go to Earth 2, or rather Earth 2 seeps into the Justice League.
I remember it vaguely. I would have to watch it again. I don't remember disliking it, but I feel like it's been so many years since we watched it.
It's been a long time, and we saw it the one time. I never wanted to watch it again, so I wasn't nuts about it. And it's not a trade that sells all the time either. And it's not a trade I read, so I will admit that. Maybe I'd like the book way more, but from the movie itself, I would also not put it on my best.
Next is Batman Under the Red Hood.
I like this one, and I know Red Hood fans like it. Yes, I do. Because because he pushes Batman so much, right? He tells him, Nightwing 1, there's some stupid moments in there, like when Batman puts the putty on one of the early villains that Nightwing and Batman, I should say Robin, that Robin and Batman are fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, what, did you put putty in his eyes? And then the putty explodes. And Nightwing's like, oh, right. It's like, you've worked with Batman for fucking years. Why did they write him to be like surprised at Batman's antics?
Doing, yeah.
So I thought there's some dumb moments like that. But then there's some cool moments where Red Hood is telling Batman, the Joker did this to us. He did this to your family. He did something awful. And you won't kill him. I'm not saying kill the Penguin, Riddler, or any of them, just the Joker, and that's it, because it would solve so much. And that's when Batman tells him, as soon as I kill him, though, that immediately opens up the door to, well, I killed the Joker, why not this other person? Why not this other villain? He says that's, as soon as you cross that line, you never go back. And it's kind of proven to whiny-ass Robin. Jason Todd got himself killed. And the Joker crowbarred him to death, and he's mad about it because he's the weakest Robin of the bunch. And that's really the story, and it's hilarious because he's like, he took me away from you, Batman. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, Jason. Fucking just be Batman's Robin again. He has several. They all work with him. Just come back to the family, and you'll be fine. Just shoot people in the knees, like in the comics. And that's what he does now. Anytime he works with Batman, he respects Batman's laws and rules, because at the end, he's still a Robin deep down. Just like everyone else is a Robin as soon as they work with Batman. So I like that movie. And what'd you think of Joe DiMaggio, I believe it is? Mm-hmm. The same voice as Jake the dog in Adventure Time. His portrayal of Joker was very different than what we had seen before, because everyone was trying to kind of emulate Mark Hamill, rightfully so. He went, my voice is way too deep anyway. I'm just going to do my own thing.
I'm having, again, it's been years since I've seen it, and you remember these movies so well. Like, I remember everything wrong you've ever done.
Jesus.
Just kidding. But you remember these movies so well, so I don't remember disliking his voice. I feel like I thought that it was a very interesting take on the Joker, of course, like you said, something very differently. But I don't think I've really heard a Joker yet where I was like, not so great, because I also understand in all these different things as a different iteration of the Joker. Just like Harley right now in the TV show doesn't have her normal accent. It's just a different version of Harley, and it's still her at her core. So I think I was okay with it. Any
thoughts on Under the Red Hood overall?
I did enjoy the whiny bits. That was the best portion of it, was him just like, I took you away from me.
You don't remember at the end when he blows up the building, because remember he goes to save, he has to either save the Joker or someone else. But that's what it was. Okay, so that's what changed Jason, and I don't know if that happened in the comics as well. Goes to blow up the building.
Oh, yeah.
He grabs Jason and he throws him out the building, and he stays in the building exploding with the Joker. They both make it out alive, but that's when Jason's like, oh, he saved me that time. Like, you know, that's kind of what got him.
He was just throwing you out of building.
But I think that forever changed Jason, where he's like, oh, he chose me that time. And it's kind of like, I guess, redeeming it in his mind. He expected Batman to save the Joker. And I expected Batman to save the Joker, honestly.
Batman just saves himself.
Next one on this list is Justice League Doom. This was based on the Tower of Babel. The whole idea of Batman's contingency plan being used against him, and the Justice League not trusting Batman because he has this plan, and because this plan can be and was used against him. Batman allowed it to happen.
I did enjoy this movie. I thought there were some really, really funny moments, like Martian Manhunter just on fire screaming.
That's true.
Or when Batman calls somebody and he's like, the Justice League is under attack. And they're like, by who? By me.
Yeah, he was talking to Alfred.
Yeah. Was this the one with Vandal Savage too?
Yeah,
he was the villain behind it. And Superman was talking about how he would just move the Earth.
Yeah, because why don't we just move the Earth?
Batman's like, I don't have enough time to tell you why this wouldn't work.
I'm like, he's trying, Batman. Jesus, no one else has a solution here. There's something about a boom tube coming through, and it would have swallowed up the Earth. I don't remember, but yeah, that was I know in the comic it's Ra's al Ghul instead of the Vandal Savage. So that was when I watched the movie, because I had read the book, and then when I watched the movie, I'm like, fucking Vandal Savage. I was excited to see Ra's al Ghul, and they didn't have him. And being such a huge fan of the character, I was like, man, all right. But it was still a pretty decent movie. I don't believe it was it Kevin Conroy?
I don't
It might have been
remember.
Kevin Conroy. It sounds like it would have been, but if not, it was one of that second bat. Jason O'Mara, I think, is one of the ones who they used for a while. Yeah, I like Justice League Doom a lot, and I like Tower of Babel. Just if they had just made it Raish, it would have been perfect.
Raoul al Ghul.
Raoul.
Next on the list, we have Batman Year One.
It's another one I saw once or twice. Didn't go back for it. The book is a million times better, and they just didn't nail it this time. And when I say the book is better, I don't. When I hear people say that, everyone's like, well, of course the book was better, or it's that same mentality of, well, of course the first movie was better. And that's not always the case. Like with All-Star Superman, it's better than the book. So when I say that, I mean as in they haven't yet adapted it correctly. And it could be that one day, any of these stories or any of these movies, someone makes a better version of it. For now, I would say the better Batman Year One is Mask of the Phantasm, because they took a lot of inspiration from that, followed closely by Batman Begins.
Next is Batman Gotham by Gaslight.
Haven't seen it, read the book. It was pretty solid. I'm curious to see what changes they made. Gaslight is in this same era right now where they're not directly adapting the work. So I'm a little worried when I read it, but it could be that the changes are better than the book. So it's on my queue, though. I'm definitely going to watch it. Ones that Mr. Forklift did not have on his list, and these are ones that I did particularly enjoy. He had some of these as honorable mentions, but I know that Green Lantern Emerald Knights I would put very high on my animated list. I love that one. They brought it out about a month or two before the Green Lantern film, and they were doing that with movies. Dark Knight came out, and that's when they came out with Batman Gotham Knights, and that's another one that's not on this list that I really enjoyed. And they have very similar ideas of different stories in the Green Lantern Corps, and it could have taken place before the movie or in between some of these stories, with Sinestro, with Mogo, and Bafanga. A lot of great stuff on there. What'd you think of Emerald Knights or even Gotham Knights?
I really enjoyed Emerald Knights a lot. There's some stories in there that I wish we could see even more of those characters. So I don't know her name, but she lives on like that Japanese alien world, and they're all samurais, and she's got to defeat her father who's gone crazy. And I wish I could just see her story forever, because I think she's such an interesting character. And the way that they outlined the movie, where it's this new recruit hearing all these stories about these great members, and then she gets to really feel initiated into the Corps by the end of it. So yeah, a lot of really great stuff in that movie if you're a fan of the Green Lantern Corps.
And she has a deeper understanding for Kilowog. Like, that guy's a hard ass. But then you find out he had an even harder, like,
an even harder hard ass.
The guy that put them through these trials without their rings and shit. And he's like, if you die, you die. But his whole thing was he was never going to let them die.
Right.
And that's one thing he kind of learned about it. But he needed to push them to the edge to see if they were good enough to be Green Lanterns. A lot of really great stories, and I don't think there's one weak one. The character that you're talking about, they've since killed her off in the comics, and then she came back as a Black Lantern. So there you go.
All right, there she is.
Also on the honorable mentions, or ones that you and I enjoyed, Flashpoint Paradox. With Flashpoint Batman, Flashpoint Superman, all of that stuff. That one was pretty accurate to everything else, and that's actually what started this line of New 52 movies. So it was right before all of that, and they nailed it, in my opinion.
We also have on the list The Dark Knight Returns.
Parts 1 and 2. I'm so glad we waited till they released both of them as a combo pack, and that's another one that they really did a good job on in adapting Frank Miller's artwork in the work. Last time we had seen them in animated format was in Batman the Animated Series. Very similar to that Gotham Knights special. They took that same idea. That's kind of where it originated from. But now you had a whole movie of Frank Miller's Batman. And the voice of, it's RoboCop. I forgot his name at the moment. But RoboCop himself voices Batman. Did an amazing job as Old Man Bruce. It's one that I probably watch as often as Emerald Knights. Like I go back and I watch those. That's another Joker interpretation right there that they had. And everything about that, I don't think you could. The fight between Batman and Superman at the very end. The delivery of Superman, Bruce, your heart. And Bruce just fucking nails him again. It's so fucking good. And then he goes over and catches him. Don't touch him. Suddenly Superman's all healed up, even though he was just weakened by all the kryptonite. Right. It's such good shit. Yeah, I love that part 1 and 2. It's right up there in my, I would say top 3 in the string of DC animated movies. I don't think you could improve it.
It was super accurate to the comic as well. But no, the Superman parts were my favorite, especially at the end when Bruce is supposedly dead and then he hears his heartbeat and knows it's his heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, oh, he got that little bit of hope.
And it's cool that they released that before Snyder or during Snyder's run of DC movies because he intended in his universe to have Kelli be Robin in future movies. So that would have been really neat to see. And that could have been a good introduction of the character to a lot of people. I know Peter J. Tomasi, you remember when Kelli showed up in his run of Batman and Robin?
Yeah.
They never went forward with his plans, unfortunately, and he can't reveal what his plans were,
Aww.
but I would have loved to have seen that. We know Kelli exists, but unfortunately they just didn't do anything with her or wouldn't let him.
We also have Batman Superman Apocalypse.
It's the one where he goes up against Darkseid, Batman himself.
Really, it's more about Supergirl getting kidnapped, taken to Apocalypse.
I suppose. But
we do get probably one of the best Batman moments ever of, I've activated all your hell spores. And he's like, that's a lie. Nobody knows the code. And then Batman's all like, 9 Alpha Omega, bullshit. And then Darkseid turns around like, oh, who is this man?
That's when he has his attention finally, like, who's this human, this bat creature? Defeats him without throwing a single goddamn punch. Fucking Darkseid. And he earns his respect. A human? Take the girl. I'll make no move against her. It's like, shit. Fucking Batman.
That's all it took.
I think the top of both of our lists is going to be Batman Mask of the Phantasm, as we mentioned before. If we had to put a top, that would be it. But that's a good question. Let's talk about worse ones, because Innsmouth doesn't want us to, while we're not ranking these, aside from saying Mask of the Phantasm is the best, some stinkers, we already mentioned the few that we weren't crazy on, but this is still building on Mr. Forklift's list. And the Mystery of the Batwoman.
Yeah.
The final, I guess, animated series movie.
I just don't even remember hardly any of that movie.
The one good thing about it is they have the Batman-Barbara relationship in there, which was hinted at in Batman Beyond. It was hinted at in the comics. And then people lost their shit when they did it in Killing Joke for whatever fucking reason. And it's like, were you guys not watching or reading any Batman?
Right.
And this is the one in which they are riding to places together. She's on his arm constantly, and he's a little awkward about it because he doesn't quite, it's like early in the relationship where he's finding out they're not quite as compatible. They don't
as
really
him
tell
and
us.
Catwoman? Yeah.
Well, in the end, we're talking about the animated series, so Talia or Andrea in this case.
Just Catwoman.
But this is where you had the Batwoman, and there's like 3 of them, and I think Bane was in there at some point. It's fucking terrible. It's awful.
It was really bad.
Another bad one on the list is Superman Doomsday, which I did not like. I didn't like that adaptation of it. I didn't like the recent one, Superman Death of Superman. Just not a fan of it. And maybe it's that the story didn't grab me even back when it was coming out. Yes, it's Superman 75, Death of Superman. It's a huge milestone in comic history, but it's all right. You know, it's no Sinestro Corps War.
Right. Yes. You also have on the list Justice League War, which I didn't even know was a thing, and I've probably seen it, so now we know my thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's the New 52 adaptation of that first arc that I still sell all the time, but it's when Darkseid is first invading Earth, and they loosely use that to kind of reverse inspire Zack Snyder's plan for Justice League Part 2, where they instead invade Apokolips and then, fight Darkseid and the rest of his army. And it's pretty forgettable. I think the comic is stronger because of Jim Lee's artwork, but the movie itself is a pass. One that he had on worst was The Killing Joke, and that's one that I am going to disagree and actually put it on the good side of the DC animated movies, because it was a dream for years to have Mark Hamill. They had him read the comic at conventions, even at Star Wars conventions. Like, can you read this bit of Batman The Killing Joke? Because you are the Joker, and if they're going to adapt any Joker, it's going to be The Killing Joke. And he kept talking about retiring and never doing the Joker again. So we as fans were like, before you retire, you and Kevin Conroy need to do The Killing Joke. That you need to do it. And it was that way for years, and we finally fucking got it. And it was done really well. I know people don't like the first half where we're following Barbara Gordon, and people freaked out about the Barbara and Bruce sex scene on the rooftop, which again, I was like, the fucking animated series, the comics, they've done this, whatever. And a lot of people were not happy that they extended that story. And I know Bruce Timm said that if you just adapt The Killing Joke, and ends up being like a 30 to 40 minute thing. So they had to do more with it. And I don't think it was particularly weak. I thought it was great. And then when you get to the part that is the comics exactly, there is that deeper impact of what he did to Barbara because they did have a relationship. It's there. And I will say that the one bit I did not like is the ending, because they ended up interpreting that as Batman killing the Joker. And if you read the earlier interviews between Brian Bolland and the artist, they're like, no, that wasn't our intention, but that's kind of neat that people read it that way. It's him just taking him away. It's two insane people laughing. Why would, and in the comics, or in the movie, they make it so that Joker is silenced and you just hear the rain of Batman choking the Joker. And I did not interpret the killing joke in that way. And I know Kevin Smith said it once on a podcast, and everyone's like, oh, Kevin Smith said it, so this is how it is.
It must be true.
He didn't fucking work on it. He has nothing to do with the guy. He's as much as credible as anyone else that fucking says, I read it this way or I read it that way. So because of that, I still put it on my best, but there are some changes there. That's the change that I don't like. Not the Batman and Barbara thing, but the choking of the Joker at the end.
You didn't include in your best All-Star Superman.
That's right. That's a great one. One of my favorites. It's probably my favorite animated Superman, and definitely one of my favorites. You have any thoughts on the lists overall?
No, I think
the killing joke?
There's so many, and I wish I could go back and really sit down and like remember. Okay, here's all the ones we've seen. Here's our thoughts. I should keep a journal of all the movies that we watch so I can remember these. But yeah, there's, I think even the bad movies, there are some great moments in them. And that's because we love these characters so much. So we can always find one moment where we're like, yeah, that was awesome. But yes, for the most part, there are some that are really stinkers. And then some, of course, that we really enjoy that we watch over and over again.
Our last set of questions come from @SpoonSandwich. And the first one was covered earlier. What's your best Christmas memory? So we hope you enjoyed the answers there, Spoon. Is there one Christmas movie you watch every year? There is not for me at least. There's not the one that I'm like, I have to watch this. I hear that all the time. I have to watch this or it doesn't feel like Christmas. And I'm just I work in retail. So to me, I don't have the time to like celebrate or, feel the season because I'm just so focused on retail. And you work in food and beverage. So I'm sure it's similar to where you get busier during the holidays.
Oh, yeah.
No movie that I watch every year. No tradition like that.
No, my dad has, we've always had movies that we like. I have a very fond spot for the old Rudolphs or A Year Without Santa Claus. Those claymation movies that I grew up with. I do enjoy watching those. Leo likes The Grinch, so we watched The Grinch twice this year. But yeah, like you said, and I think this was the first Christmas in a really long time that I kind of took a step back and kind of breathed and enjoyed it a little bit more because I got to see it through Leo's eyes. So it was different. So for me, it wasn't just go. Okay, I have this day off with my family, but I got to go into work later and I got to do this later and I got to, I did take that day. I only checked into work once and to just kind of relax and enjoy it a little bit more. And I think as he gets older, we'll fall into that more frequently. But as of right now, we don't really have the tradition of watching a movie every single year.
How about this? Do you have a favorite Christmas movie?
Probably Rudolph.
The Claymation Rudolph?
Claymation Rudolph.
For me, it's Robert Downey Jr. one. Kiss, Kiss, Bang, Bang.
Okay. I thought you were going to say awesome. Die Hard.
No. And I haven't seen Die Hard enough times.
People are saying Batman 89 is a Christmas movie as well.
I'd say Batman Returns is a Christmas movie more than...
No, I thought they said 89. Maybe it was Batman Returns.
Because there's no Christmas at all that I remember in 89.
There was like snow, wasn't there? I don't even know.
I think that was trash. Like a loose newspaper in Gotham. Spoon also asks, and this one's for you, how are you enjoying Pokemon so far?
Listen, I haven't even played since the last time we spoke. It is definitely on my list. I have some time off coming soon. I'm hoping to really dive into it further and tackle it because it is, of course, on my resolutions. But I have that blanket that I promised I would make, and I'm almost done. I'm so close. I'm hoping like today's the day and like I finish it. But until I get that done, really, that's all my free time is going into that right now. So hopefully soon within the next few days, I can play a little bit more. I did enjoy what I played, except for those giant Pokemon, which is a giant fucking waste of my time. But yeah, that's fine. That's it.
So you're not a fan of Gigantamax?
No, because the thing is you go to fight them, right? And then your Pokemon can't really do anything against them. And then you just got to wait until it gets bored and runs away. It's like a 20-minute process if you can't beat the Pokemon.
Well, I know the Brokette core members are deep in Sword and Shield, so if you have any advice for Papa Kelli on the Gigantamax, I have no idea what y'all are talking about, but tweet her on Twitter at PalpaKelli. That's Kelly with an I.
The next question is for you. If you could change or update one piece of podcasting equipment or a part of your podcasting recording process, what would it be?
I mean, ideally, and I don't know if these are long-term goals or just kind of lofty wishes, but I would love to. Editing is the worst part of it. It's the part that I procrastinate on or don't or enjoy the least. But I know if I don't do it, the end product isn't going to be as strong. And if that end product is not as strong, then that non-effort's going to be clear. At least to me, it's clear to me when I listen to podcasts. If someone does not edit the show or doesn't care about audio levels or anything like that. So that it tells me it's not necessarily a lack of dedication, but it's like, all right, maybe less time is being invested into that particular production. So I would love to have someone that edits it for me, but I know at the same time it would be weeks of progress because I would be like, no, that's not how I would edit it. No, that's what I would do. Or only I know how I want the show to really sound or come across. So that's one thing that maybe won't ever happen. But I know a lot of big time podcasters do have people that they trust that edit it for them. And it would obviously have to be someone that knows the show or would listen. But that's a long-term thing. I know editors are really expensive. Not going to happen anytime soon. I would love to, even though I'm complaining about editing, I would love to do either multiple episodes a week or have a second show. But that's another one that's a time investment, or would have to do it with maybe a different host or a different podcaster, or we would just have to find, which for you, it's not as imperative because you can sit here for an hour and that's your week, maybe, right? But it's also thinking about the topics or reading the book or whatever. So that's another thing that ideally I would like to do. Podcast equipment, I'm pretty happy with the microphone that we're using, that we've been using for years. This setup so far has been working well, that you helped put together mainly. You did most of the work here, and having the soundproof in a different room, we can sit more comfortably as we record, which is an improvement for all of you too. That'd be the only thing, is just more content. I would like to do more live streams or another show or another episode a week or something. That's the main resolution or the main thing I would like to do, but nothing as far as upgrading any of the equipment we have.
I would just like more time in the day. I feel like we just don't. And, you mentioned, yes, you're the one who finds all the news and sets everything up, which I know takes a giant chunk of your week. But even trying to figure out, okay, when are we going to record this week? Sometimes we wait till Leo goes to bed, but then I'm so tired, and you can hear it on the show. So then we got to find somebody to watch him. And then that's time that we could be going out because somebody's watching him to record. And not that I'm complaining, right? We prioritize our time and we really enjoy doing this show. But if we just had like all the time in the world to get everything done, I would love. And hopefully as he gets older, that gets a little bit easier because then he can go and like entertain himself while we do this. And then that'd be a game changer.
We'll find out. We're first-time parents. Not sure if that's true. I know some Brokette core members have older kids and they somehow play Pokemon and have time to play games. So maybe that's promised there. I'm not too sure, but we'll find out some year. You'll hear about it here. If you hear us talking more video games, then you'll know. But thank you guys so much. As we mentioned earlier, news was nothing, but the Brokette core came through just as they do every week for us. And some of you, like Bobby, submit a question every week, which is very much appreciated. And because of that, there is this episode today. But we do have a comic book highlight this week. We won't be doing the Brokette block because that's basically, do you want to cover Christmas now since there was these Christmas questions?
Sure, we can. We had a very jam-packed Christmas with both families and close family friends that we went to visit. And Leo just got all the presents in the world. All of them.
First grandson vibes.
First grandson on both sides. Very, very fortunate little boy to get all the things he did from people who really love him and really put time and effort into thinking about things that he would like. So that was really my favorite part of Christmas, is, again, getting to see that through his eyes and getting to see the wonder when he opens his presents. And So I think as we continue to move forward with Christmases, that will continue to be my favorite portion. You know, our main present is actually coming after Christmas. So I think we'll really enjoy that when we get to it, but we're just not there yet.
Yeah, overall, I think we're very fortunate that we are able to spend Christmas with both our parents. They're near enough to us that we can just drive. All right, spend the morning with your parents, spend the afternoon with my parents, and they get to see the grandchild. And I hear often from customers or people that are visiting, they're like, "Oh, I'm visiting my grandchild," so they don't get to see him for months sometimes.
Right.
And so I think we're in a very fortunate situation where they can see Leo as often as they do. And Leo can be not only with them as often as they are, but with us. I know a lot of parents, some of them are single parents. Some of them don't see their parents because of a variety of situations or have step parents or whatever. And, situations work on all ends. But for Leo to be able to, or at least us to be able to see Leo every time, I think that's a very fortunate thing, and fortunate that we got to spend Christmas as whole as we are now. I think that's something to be grateful for. Absolutely. So yeah, those are my Christmas thoughts for this year. Let's head into our Patreon shout outs of the week and the last ones for the year.
First shout out goes out to Renee, whose Twitter handle is at Yugi's Pokemon.
Renee is an Xbox player. Ooh. He tweeted out, quote, "And with this achievement from Halo Master Chief Collection, I hit over 30K on my gamer score. Merry Christmas," end quote. I'm guessing that's a shit ton.
Don't know what that means.
I know I used to see on the back of Xbox games like 200G or whatever, and 30,000 does sound like, if that's about right, about the measure, then yeah, 30,000 is years of Xbox. So well done, Renee. I know gamer score is huge with Xbox gamers. It's kind of like the trophies on PlayStation. It's basically like that. Next shout out goes out to Corey B on Twitter at Comictropolis.
Corey said, quote, "The stockings were hung by the chimney with care in hopes that Zack Snyder's Justice League soon would be there. Merry Christmas and a hashtag release the Snyder Cut New Year," end quote.
Well done, Corey. And he put up the picture of the Release the Snyder Cut banner that flew over the Warner Brothers lot like last week. And then in front of it was photoshopped Santa's sleigh and the reindeers pulling it along.
Brilliant.
Pretty awesome. So huge supporter of the Release the Snyder Cut movement. Be sure to follow both Comictropolis and at Yugi's Pokemon on Twitter, as they are our shout outs for this week.
If you too would like your Patreon shout out every single month for as little as $1 a month, that's just 25 cents an episode. That's like less than almost anything else that you can purchase. You too can be a Patreon backer.
Because of our Patreon shout outs, we have been able to do the show yet another year, yet another week. It's a huge part of us continuing this going because it does cover the upload costs. And as you guys have seen on the goals, it's improved the audio of the show over the last couple of years. So that's all thanks to the Brokette Core members. That's once again at patreon.com/thereasonsimBroke. But we understand that not everyone is in a situation where they can help support the show financially. So if you have a moment, if you know someone with a new iDevice or you want to tell someone that you know that's looking into podcasts or looking to subscribe to something, if you mention our show, if they like DC Comics or are into the comic book world, we appreciate that. All of that word of mouth is very effective to the growth of the show.
And now we can move into our final portion of the show today, our comic book highlight, which is Wonder Woman Dead Earth #1.
This is the latest from DC Black Label, the writing and art by Daniel Warren Johnson, with colors by Mike Spicer.
The premise of the book is essentially fast forwarding through time. We're living in a post-apocalyptic world where there's monsters everywhere, and Wonder Woman gets awoken. She was in some sleep chamber. She gets awoken and doesn't know what happened, doesn't know what's going on, but still says, "I need to protect these humans. These humans are still here. I'm going to do what I can."
And we know that it seems to be a modern Wonder Woman where it's not one that is lost to the world. She knows who Batman is. She had her suit. She tries to build something similar to it. She knows who Cheetah is. So you can almost pluck Wonder Woman from the world now and put her in the comics now and put her in this book. The artwork is amazing. I know he's worked on Image before. There was a Hawk, I should have looked it up, but he did something recently that has a very similar art style to this, and he applied it to Wonder Woman, and I think it works really well. It's dynamic, and the action shots, the landscape, and the breakdown of this post-apocalyptic DC world work really well. What'd you think of the characterization of Diana as in this hopeless world and still maintaining that love and protection for not just the humans, but for nemesis like Cheetah, or even for people like the villain in the Colosseum, who she says, no, spare him?
I think that it, again, is very true to who Wonder Woman is, and that's what I always like to see, right? Give me a different iteration, but keep them who they are, and definitely speaks to who Diana is and her strength, and like I said, doesn't even know what's going on, but says there's humans and I'm here to protect them. This is what I've set out to do. This is my goal for life, so I'll figure it out as I go, but right now, in this moment, this is what I need to do.
And this was a series I did not expect to sub to. I was so back and forth on it. DC sent an advanced copy, and I read it digitally, and as always, I can't do the digital shit. Like, this is why I don't read more advanced copies, because I feel like I'm ruining the experience for myself. Now my first exposure to that book is, the monitor, and it's got the watermarks on it and everything. So I'm like, going back and forth. I ordered a couple of extras regardless, because they hit an incentive to, this was one of the returnable titles from DC, thankfully. And when I finally got my hands on it, I'm like, went through it digitally and I liked it, but not enough to, I'm like, all right, well, I want to see the artwork. I want to see it breathe, really. And when I got my hands on it, I'm like, this is how it should have been presented in this Black Label format, in oversized, with the story and setup and everything. And I loved it. So we're sub to this miniseries. It'll, like the Black Label books, it'll be a few issues long. And I'm really happy with the full setup as I got to read it. And I really enjoyed it. I like the artwork, and I like this different take on the characters. You removed Batman from the equation already, so this is all Wonder Woman as she works into hopefully a joyous world where she can at least save these humans and bring them either to a better place where they can rebuild society, maybe take them back to Themyscira. I don't know what they're going to do, but I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
I definitely enjoyed the story. I thought it was a really cool take on Wonder Woman and her journey and where she can go. And I enjoyed the flashbacks, right? Where you have her mother talking to her and saying, this is why I made you. Like, don't go to the world of man. You're going to be strong no matter what. You're going to survive, etc., etc. I will say, though, I am not a fan of the artwork. So exact opposite side of you. I felt that she looked too childish. She looked everyone looked much, much younger than I would have liked. And while there were some really cool things in the art, like you said, like the details, some of the characters that they created, the colors were really beautiful, but just the general face shape, the shape of the bodies, I don't know, it just didn't do it for me. So I did find myself skimming through more quickly just to read the words and see where the story was going, rather than take that time to really fully immerse myself into it.
So that's something to keep in mind. I would say if you're not, and I know you do like Dan Allred, but that more simplified yet detailed style does sit on Wonder Woman. So maybe if you're not a fan of Allred, or I don't know who else to compare this guy to.
See, I don't even know that I would compare him to Allred, though. All the characters are very round to me, which led to a very childlike appearance, especially that last panel that we got of Wonder Woman. I was like, she looks 12. At least that's my interpretation. That's how it looked to me. So there were some really beautiful things. And if art doesn't necessarily make or break a comic for you, then it was still very easy for me to follow the story and enjoy what was going on. But for the most part, that just wasn't an aspect that I really clung to in this.
So there you go. That is our last comic book highlight of the year. As we close out, our Brokette blog was essentially the questions earlier. That was the Brokette blog. So we'll just close out with the end of 2019.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts, not necessarily just podcast related, but into 2020 that you're kind of thinking about? Not a New Year's resolution, because I think every day should be that resolution where you do try to
be better, do different. I think that this was a very busy and interesting and successful year for the both of us, in both the podcasts, of course, winning that podcast
awards 2019 Games and Hobbies,
which was absolutely fantastic, but also the steps that we made in our career and our lives and everything. So as always, going into a new year. This will be our 12th New Year's going into together, but thank you for sticking by me and making changes and doing what we need to do to continue to be strong and move forward together in all aspects of our lives.
And I, of course, want to also reflect and thank Kelli for the patience she's had, not only for we started this in 2012, but the years of podcasting, but for myself as I continue to grow as a person, as now as a dad as well. So there's there's a whole layer of life that it's like, my mind and my body's like, what the fuck? We've never done this. So like being patient during that long transition, as I continue to work at not just, work in our lives, but in Leo's as well. So a lot of people don't have this much patience or time or whatever. So huge thanks to Kelli for sticking through and being there for everyone, not just for Leo and I.
I want to cry. Love you.
I love you too. Let's pass that love on as well to the Brokette Core, because they gifted us the podcast awards, which we had been pushing for the last 3 years, and third time was the charm.
Woo.
They came through with a drive and persistence that was like, no, this year is the one. And like Scott, for example, from Lazy Gaming Guys, he's like, no, this is the one. This is the year. Like he was so sure of it. And it seems like everyone else felt it but us. You know what I mean?
We just didn't want to get our hopes up and then be let down again.
Yeah, and this it was great to be nominated at all. Like in the first year we pushed for it, we got nominated. Second year we pushed for it again, we got nominated as well. We could have easily never gotten nominated each year. And then the third year, nominated, and then we won under Games and Hobbies, and that was a huge one. And once we get the trophy that is everyone's, the podcast awards ones, we'll do an unboxing, we'll do a video, we'll show it off like crazy because we're very proud of it. We're proud of the listeners, the Brokette Core members, the supporters, everything around the show that has kept it going because of the podcast awards. I mean, you can say 2019 has been the strongest year for the podcast. Downloads were bigger this year than in any previous year. And that's just the show continuing to grow, continuing to expand, more people discovering the show. And that's always awesome. And it's something that while we do enjoy the growth and the award and everything, we're very conscious, I don't know if you are, in not changing the content of the show. I know we've gotten some complaints over the years or months of how we don't talk about Marvel enough, or how we don't cover this enough or that. But I think changing that it'd be like us being, like we talked about earlier, Warner Brothers, trying to cater to...
We want to be true to ourselves and who we are.
Or to the listeners we have now, or that we retained for all these years. Because they're here for a certain personality, a certain tone, a certain topic, whatever. And we want to be true to that, because as soon as you change that as well, it's very apparent and it's very clear. And that's something that I never want to change. I always wanted it to be something we talk about that we enjoy. And then listeners discover the show, and in turn, they end up finding something in the show that they enjoy. And I think that's key in the long-term show continuing, because if we had only covered things that we think only that others would like, I don't think we would have continued since 2012. The show would have ended very early on.
Right.
So that's something that I look to continue to keep going in 2020, in spite of whatever else might happen around the show. The content has to remain. The content has to still be there, the spirit of it.
But those are our thoughts wrapping up the year. Thank you so much for tuning in, whether this was your first episode, whether you've listened to us all year, whether you've listened to us since the very beginning. It's so appreciated. Again, the reason that we do this show is for you.
So thank you so much for joining us for today's episode, or for another year, or for another multiple year Brokette Core member. I've been Rocket Grunt Daniel.
And I am Emperor Palpa Kelli.
And Brokette Core, all will be well.